When my son told me our family funeral was trivial, I thought grief had made him cruel, until I discovered he was the last person to see them alive. The empty chair beside me at the cemetery wasn't just absence, it was betrayal carved in silence. But the voicemail my daughter left me hours before she died would reveal a secret that changed everything I thought I knew about that night. Have you ever been abandoned in your darkest hour by the person who should have held you up? Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was hiding something that could destroy everything you believed about your family? This is about more than a son who missed his father and sister's funeral. This is about the devastating secret that made him disappear. The screaming match at that diner in Boise. The blocked phone calls. The money that went missing. And the truth about what really happened on those icy Montana roads. Stay with me, because what Carter was hiding will make you question everything you think you know about family loyalty. If you've ever loved someone who broke your heart, hit that like button right now. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to choose between protecting someone and protecting the truth? Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The funeral director asked if I wanted to remove the extra chair. I said no. Someone needed to witness my son's absence. My name is Darlene Patterson, and I'm 67 years old. 3 days ago, I buried my husband Frank and my daughter Mia in the same ceremony. Today, I'm sitting in my kitchen in Des Moines, Iowa, staring at my phone, trying to understand how my only living child could abandon me when I needed him most. Snow was falling that Tuesday morning when we lowered the caskets. Big, heavy flakes that stuck to everything, my black coat, the pastor's Bible, the brass handles that carried away my whole world. I kept looking at that empty chair in the front row, the one reserved for Carter. My son. The one person who should have been holding my hand. Instead, I held Frank's funeral program in one hand and Mia's in the other, my fingers so numb I could barely feel the paper. People kept coming up to me, whispering how sorry they were, asking where Carter was. I made excuses. Work emergency. Couldn't get a flight. Food poisoning. Lies to cover his lie. Frank would have been furious. He raised Carter to show up, to stand tall when life knocked you down. A man faces his responsibilities, he used to say, usually while teaching Carter how to fix something with his hands. Frank could fix anything with those gentle, calloused hands. Everything except his own son's cowardice. Mia would have been heartbroken. She always defended Carter, even when he stopped calling, even when he missed Christmas 2 years running. He's just busy, Mom, she'd say, making excuses I was too tired to make anymore. He loves us. He's just different now. Different. That's what we called it when someone you love becomes a stranger. The service was beautiful, if you can call saying goodbye to half your family beautiful. Pastor Williams spoke about Frank's 40 years working the railroad, how he never missed a day, never complained about the cold Montana winters or the long stretches away from home. He talked about Mia's bright smile, her job at the veterinary clinic, how she called me every single day just to check in. He didn't mention Carter at all. When they lowered the caskets, I felt something break inside my chest. Not just grief, something sharper. Anger, maybe. Or recognition. The knowledge that I was truly alone now, and my son had chosen to make it that way. I remember Frank's hands on my waist that last morning, pulling me close in our kitchen while the coffee brewed. 43 years of marriage, and he still touched me like I was something precious. Love you, Dar, he whispered against my hair. Always will. I never got to say it back. The phone rang, some problem at Mia's work, and by the time I hung up, he was already in the truck, heading to pick her up for their drive to Montana. To confront Carter. To demand answers about the money, about the lies, about why their son had become someone they didn't recognize. Carter's text came as they lowered the caskets, hope it went well. Had to work. 5 words. For 2 lives. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt abandoned by family when you needed them most? Your stories help me feel less alone. I tried calling Carter 17 times that first week. The 18th time, I got a message I'll never forget. The number you have dialed has blocked incoming calls from this number. My own son blocked me. While I was grieving. While I was planning funerals and dealing with life insurance and trying to figure out how to live in a house that suddenly felt too big and too quiet. I stared at my phone screen, seeing my reflection in the black glass. 67 years old, silver hair a mess, eyes red from crying. When did I become the kind of mother whose child runs from her pain instead of sharing it? I called his work next. Peterson Tech Consulting, how may I direct your call? Carter Patterson, please. This is his mother. A pause. I'm sorry, ma'am, but Mr. Patterson has requested that all family calls be redirected to his voicemail. Family calls. Like I was some crazy ex-girlfriend instead of the woman who taught him to ride a bike, who stayed up all night when he had pneumonia at age 8, who drove 6 hours to Seattle when he graduated college because I was so proud I couldn't stand it. His voicemail was generic, professional. You've reached Carter Patterson. Leave a detailed message and I'll return your call within 24 hours. Carter, it's Mom. I know you're angry about something, but we need to talk. Your father and sister are dead. Dead, Carter. And you won't even take my calls. What happened to you? What happened to my sweet boy? He never called back. I tried email next. Bounced back, undeliverable. He'd changed his address and hadn't told me. I tried Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, blocked on every platform. It was like he'd erased me from his life with surgical precision. That's when I found Frank's cologne on his pillow. I buried my face in it, breathing in that familiar scent of aftershave and motor oil and the mint gum he always chewed. For a moment, I could almost feel his arms around me, his voice in my ear telling me everything would be okay. But it wouldn't be okay. My husband was dead, my daughter was dead, and my son had cut me out of his life like I was a tumor. I drove to the post office the next morning, bought one of those flat-rate boxes, and packed it full of things Carter might want. Frank's railroad watch. Mia's veterinary school graduation photo. The wooden train set Frank built for Carter when he was 5, the one he played with until he was 12. I wrote a letter. I don't know what I did wrong, but I'm sorry. Please don't shut me out. You're all I have left. I shipped it overnight. 3 days later, it came back marked, return to sender, refused. What would you do if your own child cut you off during your grief? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I need to know I'm not crazy for feeling this abandoned. I was cleaning out Mia's purse when I found it. Her phone, dead battery, stuffed under a pile of tissues and mint gum and the little notebook where she wrote down her patients' names. 3 weeks after the funeral, I finally worked up the courage to go through her things. The police had returned everything from the accident, wallets, phones, Frank's thermos that somehow didn't break. Personal items that survived when the people didn't. Mia's phone took forever to charge. Ancient iPhone with a cracked screen that she refused to replace because, it still works, Mom, and I'm saving for a house. Always practical, my Mia. Always thinking ahead to a future she'd never see. When it finally turned on, I saw 17 missed calls from me, 4 from her boss at the vet clinic, and 1 from Carter. The timestamp made my blood run cold, 11:47 p.m., the night before the accident. But it was the voicemail from Mia that stopped my heart. I sat in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by boxes of clothes I couldn't bear to donate yet, and pressed play. Her voice filled the silence, shaky and scared in a way I'd never heard before. Mom, it's me. I know it's late, but I had to tell someone. I went to Carter's apartment in Seattle last weekend, to surprise him for his birthday. The door was unlocked, so I went in, and... Mom, he wasn't alone. There was a woman there. And a little girl. She was maybe 4, and she looked just like Carter did at that age. Same eyes, same stubborn chin. My hand started shaking. The woman called her Emma. And Emma. Mom, Emma called Carter Daddy. He has a daughter. A daughter he never told us about. When he saw me, he went crazy. Started yelling about privacy and boundaries, made me promise not to tell you or Dad. But I can't keep this secret. It's eating me alive. A pause. I could hear her crying softly. There's more, Mom. I found bills on his counter. Rent for a house in Tacoma. Private school tuition. Credit cards I've never heard of. He's been living a completely different life, and we had no idea. I think he's been taking money from his company to pay for it all. Dad was right to be suspicious about those expensive gifts he's been sending. Another pause. Car sounds in the background. She was driving while leaving this message. I confronted Carter about what I saw. He begged me not to tell you and Dad, but I can't lie anymore. This family doesn't keep secrets. I'm driving to Montana tomorrow with Dad to talk to Carter face to face. We're going to make him explain everything. I'm scared, Mom. Not of Carter, but of what this means for our family. If he could hide something this big, what else has he been lying about? The message cut off there. They died 12 hours later on an icy road, driving to confront my son about the secret family he'd been hiding from us for years. I sat there in the dark, holding my dead daughter's phone, finally understanding why Carter couldn't face me at the funeral. It wasn't grief that kept him away. It was guilt. Have you ever discovered something about a loved one that changed everything you thought you knew about them? Share your story below. I'm not the only one whose family fell apart overnight. 2 days before the accident, we were all together at Murphy's Diner in Boise. It was supposed to be a celebration, Frank's retirement dinner. Instead, it became the last conversation I'd ever have with my husband and daughter. Carter had driven down from Seattle, which surprised me. He'd been making excuses for months, too busy with work, too stressed, too whatever. But there he was, sitting across from us in that red vinyl booth, looking handsome but tired, like he hadn't been sleeping well. Frank was excited to finally retire. 40 years on the railroad, and he was ready to spend time with his grandkids, or so we thought. He kept talking about fishing trips and road trips and maybe finally visiting Carter more often in Seattle. You should come back to Iowa more, Frank said, reaching for his coffee. Your mom misses you. Hell, we all do. Carter shifted uncomfortably. I've been busy, Dad. My company's expanding. Expanding? Frank raised an eyebrow. Must be paying well. That new car outside, what did that cost you? I saw Carter's jaw tighten. It's a lease. Expensive lease. And those gifts you've been sending your mom, that jewelry didn't come from Target. Mia was quiet, pushing her fries around her plate. She kept glancing at Carter like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Now I know why. She already knew about his secret life, and it was killing her to keep quiet. I do okay for myself, Carter said carefully. Just curious how a tech consultant affords all that luxury, Frank pressed. Your mom and I raised you to be smart with money. Those gifts make us wonder if you're being smart with someone else's money. That's when Carter's face changed. The careful mask slipped, and for a second, I saw pure panic. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've been around long enough to recognize when someone's living beyond their means, Frank said, his voice getting that edge it got when he was serious. And I've been around long enough to know when my son is lying to me. Carter stood up so fast his water glass tipped over, ice cubes scattering across the table. I don't have to sit here and listen to accusations. Sit down, Frank said firmly. We're not done talking. Yeah, we are. Carter threw a 20 on the table. Thanks for dinner. I've got a long drive back. That's when Frank stood up too, and I knew this was about to go bad. Frank was 6'2" and still strong from all those years of physical work. When he got that look in his eyes, you listened. Your sister knows what you've been doing. Frank shouted after him. Carter stopped dead at the diner door. Turned around. The look on his face, I'd never seen him look so scared. Stay out of my business, Dad. All of you. He walked out into the night. Frank and Mia stared after him, then at each other. "We're driving to Seattle," Mia said quietly. "Tomorrow." That was the last time I saw them alive. Have you ever had a family fight that you couldn't take back? Tell me in the comments. Sometimes the things we don't say hurt worse than the things we do. I'd never hired a private investigator before. Honestly, I didn't even know how to find one until my neighbor Betty mentioned her cousin used one during her messy divorce. Rachel Morrison's office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation place. Not exactly what I expected, but then again, I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe something from those detective shows Frank used to watch. Rachel was about 50, short gray hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She poured me coffee from a pot that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in weeks and sat across from me at a desk covered in file folders. "Tell me what's going on, Mrs. Patterson." So I did. All of it. The funeral Carter missed. The blocked phone calls. Mia's voicemail about the secret family. The fight at the diner. Rachel listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "You want me to find out what your son's been hiding? I need to know what killed my husband and daughter. Because it wasn't just that icy road. It was whatever Carter was doing that made them drive to Seattle in the middle of winter to confront him." Rachel studied me for a long moment. "Mrs. Patterson, are you sure you want to know? Some secrets are kept for good reasons. Once I start digging, I can't bury what I find." I thought about Frank's empty side of the bed. Mia's phone that would never ring again. The grandchildren I'd never meet if Carter kept shutting me out. My family is already destroyed. I need to know why. She quoted me $1,500 plus expenses. I wrote the check without hesitation. What was money compared to answers? "I'll need access to anything you have of theirs. Phone records, bank statements, anything that might give me a starting point." I handed her a box I'd prepared. Frank's cell phone bill from the past year. Carter's old college transcripts that had his social security number. Photos of him from Christmas 2 years ago, the last time he came home. Rachel flipped through the photos, stopping at one where Carter was hugging Mia by our Christmas tree. Both of them smiling, looking like the family we used to be. "He looks happy here." That was before whatever happened. I touched the photo gently. Before he became someone I don't recognize. People change for all kinds of reasons, Mrs. Patterson. Money troubles. Bad relationships. Sometimes they're protecting someone. Sometimes they're protecting themselves. I remembered the way Carter looked at that diner when Frank mentioned Mia knowing his secrets. Pure terror. "What do you think he's hiding?" Rachel closed the folder. "Given what your daughter found, the woman, the child, the expensive lifestyle, I'd guess he's either embezzling money to support 2 families, or he's gotten involved in something that pays well but isn't exactly legal. Maybe both." My chest tightened. "My son isn't a criminal. Your son has been living a double life for years without any of you knowing. That takes skill. And planning. And usually, a very good reason. Would you hire someone to investigate your own child? Drop a comment and tell me, how far would you go for the truth?" Rachel called me a week later with news that made my stomach drop. "I've been going through Carter's financial records. It's worse than we thought." I gripped the phone, sitting in Frank's old recliner. "How much worse?" "In the past 3 years, he's moved over $200,000 through various accounts. Money going in, money going out, but not in ways that match his salary at Peterson Tech. $200,000. Frank worked 40 years and never saw that much money at once. Where did it come from?" That's where it gets interesting. Some of it appears to be legitimate, bonuses, contract work. But there are regular deposits from shell companies, offshore accounts, cryptocurrency transactions. This isn't someone just living beyond their means. This is someone running money through a washing machine. I felt sick. "You think he's stealing?" I think he's involved in something that requires him to hide the money trail. Could be embezzlement. Could be fraud. Could be something else entirely. Something else entirely. What did that even mean? There's more, Mrs. Patterson. I found the house in Tacoma your daughter mentioned. It's registered under a fake business name, but I traced it back to Carter through the utility payments. 1,500 square foot rental, 3 bedrooms. Perfect for a woman with a small child. I closed my eyes, trying to process this. My son had been living 2 separate lives, maintaining 2 separate households, for years. How had we not known? The woman's name is Jennifer Walsh. 28 years old, works part-time at a daycare center. The little girl is Emma Walsh, age 4. No father listed on the birth certificate. Emma Walsh. My granddaughter had a name. How long has this been going on? Based on the rental agreement and financial records, at least 5 years. Maybe longer. 5 years. Emma was 4, which meant Carter had been with Jennifer before Emma was born. This wasn't some recent mistake or midlife crisis. This was a deliberate choice to build a secret family while lying to us every single day. I remembered all those phone calls over the years. How's work, son? Fine, Mom, just busy. Any special ladies in your life? Not right now, Mom, focusing on my career. Lies. All of it. The money concerns me most, Rachel continued. Someone living a double life usually has a good reason. And in my experience, when there's this much money involved, someone's going to get hurt. Someone already got hurt. My husband and daughter are dead. I mean, someone else might get hurt. If Carter's mixed up with the wrong people, if he owes money or knows something he shouldn't. Are you saying he's in danger? I'm saying people who live like this usually have enemies. And enemies have a way of making problems for everyone. I stared out the window at the snow falling in my yard. Somewhere in Seattle, my son was living a life I knew nothing about, with people I'd never met, funded by money from sources Rachel couldn't identify. How would you feel if you discovered your child had been living a complete lie? Share your thoughts below. I need to know I'm not losing my mind. Rachel drove to Seattle the following weekend. I wanted to go with her, but she said it was better if I stayed home. Let me get the lay of the land first, she said. Sometimes a grandmother showing up unexpectedly can complicate things. She called me Sunday night from her hotel room. I found them. I was washing dishes, trying to keep my hands busy while my mind raced. And? The house in Tacoma is small but nice. Good neighborhood, lots of kids playing outside. Jennifer Walsh answered the door when I knocked. Pretty girl, long brown hair, looks tired. Like she's been carrying a heavy load for a while. Did you tell her who you were? I said I was looking into Carter's background for a potential business partnership. Asked if she knew him well. My heart was pounding. What did she say? She got very nervous. Started asking questions about what kind of business, who I worked for, whether Carter was in trouble. Then a little girl came running to the door. I held my breath. Mrs. Patterson, that child is definitely Carter's daughter. She has his eyes, his stubborn chin, even the way he used to tilt his head when he was thinking. There's no question. I sat down hard in Frank's chair. My granddaughter. Real, alive, 4 years old. What was she like? Sweet kid. Shy at first, but then she started chattering about preschool and her stuffed animals. She was wearing a Seattle Seahawks jersey with Daddy written on the back in glitter letters. Daddy. Carter was a father, and we'd never known. Jennifer got more nervous when Emma started talking. Kept trying to get her to go back inside. Then Emma said something that made everything click. What? She said, Daddy's at his other house today. He comes here on weekends and Wednesdays. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. Other house. Carter had been splitting time between 2 families, 2 lives, for years. I drove by his Seattle apartment next. High-rise building downtown, expensive neighborhood. The doorman knew him, said he was a good tenant, quiet, paid his rent on time. But here's the interesting part, Carter's lease is for a 2-bedroom unit. 2 bedrooms? One for him, one set up as an office. But when I looked through the lobby windows, I could see family photos in his mailbox area. Pictures of him with Jennifer and Emma at what looked like a zoo or park. I tried to imagine my son living this double life. Weekdays in his fancy downtown apartment, weekends playing house with his secret family. How did he keep it all straight? There's something else. I talked to a neighbor at the Tacoma house. Elderly woman who's lived there for 30 years, knows everyone's business. She said Carter's been helping Jennifer with rent and expenses since before Emma was born. Always pays in cash, always exactly on time. Cash payments. That explains some of the money movement Rachel had found. But here's what bothers me, Rachel continued. The neighbor also said there have been some strange visitors lately. Men in expensive suits asking questions about Carter. They didn't identify themselves, but they made Jennifer very nervous. My blood went cold. What kind of questions? About his schedule, his work, how long he'd been helping Jennifer. The neighbor got the impression they weren't friends of Carter's. Strange men asking questions. Jennifer getting nervous. Money from mysterious sources. This was getting bigger and more dangerous than I'd imagined. Rachel, is my son in trouble? I think your son is in over his head. And I think your husband and daughter driving to confront him might have put them in the wrong place at the wrong time. What would you do if you discovered your child was mixed up in something dangerous? Tell me in the comments. I don't know whether to be scared or angry. Rachel cornered Carter at his office Monday morning. She'd called ahead, told his secretary she needed to discuss a family matter. By the time he realized who she was, it was too late to run. She called me from the parking garage afterward. He broke down completely. I was sitting in my car outside the grocery store, too nervous to shop, too anxious to go home. What did he say? Everything. Once he started talking, it all came pouring out. 20 years of lies, Mrs. Patterson. This goes back way further than we thought. 20 years. Carter was 35 now, which meant this started when he was 15. Tell me. Rachel took a deep breath. It started in high school. He got a girl pregnant, someone from the rich side of town. Her parents paid him to keep quiet and disappear. $10,000, which seemed like a fortune to a teenager. My chest tightened. Carter had been a father before, and we'd never known that either. The girl's family moved away, took the baby with them. Carter never saw his first child again. But he learned something important: secrets could be profitable. What do you mean? In college, he started small. Taking money to keep quiet about cheating scandals, helping rich kids hide their problems from their parents. By the time he graduated, he had a whole network of people paying him for his silence. This wasn't the son I'd raised. Frank would have been devastated. It got bigger when he moved to Seattle. Tech industry, lots of young millionaires with more money than sense. Carter became their go-to guy for cleaning up messes. DUI arrests that needed to disappear. Affairs that needed to stay hidden. Embezzlement that needed to look like accounting errors. You're telling me my son is a blackmailer? I'm telling you your son is a professional secret keeper. And he's very good at it. I felt like I was going to throw up. Jennifer doesn't know any of this. She thinks he's just a successful tech consultant who travels a lot for work. The money he gives her, he tells her it's from bonuses and contract work. She has no idea where it really comes from. And Emma? Emma just knows she has a daddy who loves her very much but can't live with them full-time because of his job. Carter's been a good father to her, Mrs. Patterson. Whatever else he's done wrong, he genuinely loves that little girl. What about Frank and Mia? Why were they driving to Seattle that night? Rachel was quiet for a moment. Carter says your husband called him the day after that fight at the diner. Demanded he come clean about where the money was coming from. Carter panicked, said some things he shouldn't have said. What things? He told Frank that if anyone started digging into his business, people would get hurt. Not a threat, a warning. He was trying to protect you, but Frank took it as a challenge. My husband never backed down from a fight. If he thought Carter was in danger, he'd drive through a blizzard to help him. Carter's hands were shaking when he told me, Rachel continued. He said, they were coming to save me, and I killed them instead. Can you forgive someone whose lies led to tragedy? Drop your thoughts below. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. Carter told Rachel everything about that night. Every detail he'd been carrying alone for 3 months. I met her at a coffee shop downtown. She had a thick folder with her, photos and documents and a transcript of everything Carter had said. But I didn't need to read it. I could see the truth in her eyes. They called him at 9:30 p.m., Rachel said, stirring sugar into her coffee with shaking hands. Your husband was driving, Mia was in the passenger seat. Carter could hear them arguing in the background. I closed my eyes. Frank and Mia, probably fighting about whether to confront Carter at all. Frank pushing forward, Mia trying to keep the peace. Frank got on the phone. He was angry but worried. He said, son, whatever trouble you're in, we can fix it. But you need to tell us the truth. All of it. That sounded like Frank. Always believing he could fix anything, protect anyone. Carter was in his apartment in Seattle. He'd been drinking since the diner fight, trying to work up the courage to call you himself. When he heard Frank's voice, he just lost it. What did he say? He told them to turn around and go home. Said they didn't understand what they were getting into. That there were dangerous people involved, people who wouldn't hesitate to hurt anyone who asked too many questions. Dangerous people. My sweet boy had gotten mixed up with dangerous people. Frank wouldn't listen. He said they were already halfway to Seattle, they'd driven through a snowstorm to get there, and they weren't turning back without answers. Carter could hear Mia in the background saying, Dad, maybe we should wait until morning. Smart girl. Always trying to be the voice of reason. That's when Carter made his biggest mistake. He was drunk, he was scared, and he said something he'll regret for the rest of his life. I braced myself. He told Frank that if they showed up at his apartment, if they started asking questions around his building, the people he worked for would assume Frank and Mia were threats. He said these weren't the kind of people who took chances with witnesses. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't hold my coffee cup. Frank got quiet then. Carter could hear him talking to Mia, something about turning around, finding a hotel, waiting until morning. But the phone connection was bad, they were driving through mountain passes in a snowstorm. What happened next? The line went dead. Carter tried calling back, but the calls wouldn't go through. He assumed they'd lost signal and decided to drive home. He was relieved, actually. Thought he'd scared them enough to back off. Rachel pulled out a police report. The accident happened at 11:43 p.m. on Highway 2, about 40 miles outside of Spokane. According to investigators, Frank was trying to make a U-turn on an icy overpass. The car slid into the guardrail, flipped, and rolled down an embankment. I stared at the photos of twisted metal and broken glass. My family, reduced to a case number. They died instantly. Both of them. The medical examiner said they wouldn't have suffered. Small comfort. Carter didn't find out until the next morning when you called his office. By then, it was too late to take back what he'd said, too late to undo the fear he'd put in their hearts. He killed them, I whispered. No, Mrs. Patterson. The ice killed them. But Carter's lies put them on that road at the worst possible time. And he knows it. I sat there in that coffee shop, surrounded by normal people living normal lives, and tried to process that my son's criminal career had cost me my husband and daughter. There's more, Rachel said gently. About the people Carter works for. About why he's so scared. If someone's lies led to the death of people you loved, could you ever forgive them? Tell me what you think. I'm drowning here. The drive back to Iowa felt like the longest 3 hours of my life. Rachel had given me everything: phone records, bank statements, names and addresses of people Carter had been dealing with. A whole criminal network I never knew existed, with my son right in the middle of it. But what broke my heart most was a photo she'd taken through Carter's apartment window. Him and Emma at a park, her on his shoulders, both of them laughing. He looked happy. More relaxed than I'd seen him in years. My son was a good father to a child I'd never met, while being the worst son to parents who'd loved him his whole life. I kept thinking about that last phone call. Frank trying to save Carter, not knowing he was scaring him instead. Mia probably telling Frank to slow down, to be careful on the icy roads. Both of them dying because they loved their son too much to let him self-destruct alone. The irony was brutal. Frank spent 40 years keeping people safe on the railroad, watching for dangers, preventing accidents. But he couldn't see the danger in rushing to help Carter in the middle of a winter storm. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw a figure sitting on my front porch steps. In the growing darkness, I almost didn't recognize him. But there was something about the way he sat, shoulders slumped, head in his hands, that looked familiar. Carter. He was thinner than I remembered, wearing an expensive coat I'd never seen before. His hair was longer, with gray at the temples that made him look older than 35. When he heard my car door close, he looked up. The face that looked back at me was the same one I'd kissed goodnight for 18 years, the same one that used to light up when I made his favorite cookies. But his eyes were different now. Hollow. Haunted. We stared at each other across the yard. 3 months of silence, 3 months of blocked calls and returned letters, and here he was. On my porch. Looking like the broken little boy he used to be when he'd had nightmares. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked on the word. I wanted to run to him, to hold him like I used to when he was small and scared. I also wanted to scream at him, to hit him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain his choices had caused. Instead, I walked up the porch steps and sat down beside him. "Your investigator found me," he said quietly. "I had to know. I'm sorry. For all of it. For everything. Would you be able to face your child after learning they were responsible for destroying your family? Tell me, how do you even begin that conversation?" We sat on that porch for 20 minutes without saying another word. Carter stared at his hands, and I stared at the sun I thought I knew. The night air was cold, but neither of us moved to go inside. Finally, he broke the silence. "I killed them, Mom. My lies killed them." I'd been preparing for this moment since Rachel told me the truth. But hearing it from Carter's mouth hit different. Raw. Final. "Tell me why," I said. "Tell me why you threw away everything your father and I taught you." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want to know when it started? Really started?" I nodded. "Remember sophomore year when I got suspended for cheating on that chemistry test?" Of course I remembered. Frank had been furious. Made Carter write a 10-page essay about integrity and accountability. "I didn't cheat, Mom. Marcus Henley paid me $50 to take the fall for him. His dad was some big shot lawyer who would have killed him if he got caught. My punishment was 3 days out of school. His would have been military academy." My stomach dropped. "You were 15. $50 was more money than I'd ever seen. And it was so easy. Rich kid with a problem, poor kid willing to solve it." Marcus told his friends, and pretty soon I was the go-to guy for fixing things. I thought about all those times Carter seemed to have extra spending money. New clothes, expensive sneakers, always offering to pay when we went out to dinner. I'd been so proud that my son was responsible with money. College got more complicated. Bigger problems, bigger payoffs. Rich kids cheating on exams, drinking and driving, getting arrested for drugs. Their parents would pay anything to make it go away. And you helped them. I became them, Mom. I learned their language, their manners, how to dress like I belonged in their world. By senior year, I was making more money than most adults. I could see Frank in Carter's profile. The same stubborn jaw, the same way of holding his shoulders when he was ashamed. But Frank never would have sold his integrity for money.
When did you meet Jennifer? His face softened. 5 years ago. She was working at a coffee shop near my office, going to community college at night. Sweet, honest, nothing like the people I was used to dealing with. I remembered Carter mentioning coffee shops when we talked, how he'd found this great little place near work. He'd been talking about her all along. I told her I was a tech consultant. Let her think the money came from legitimate work. She deserved better than knowing what I really did for a living. And Emma? For the first time since he'd started talking, Carter smiled. Really smiled. Emma is the best thing I've ever done with my life. Smart, funny, stubborn as hell. She looks like Mia did at that age. Same eyes, same attitude. My granddaughter. Who would probably never know I existed. I was going to quit, Mom. After Emma was born, I started trying to get out of the business. But it's not that simple. These people don't just let you walk away. What people, Carter? His face went pale. People who own judges and police chiefs. People who make problems disappear permanently. I know too much about too many important people. If I try to leave, if I try to expose them, they'll hurt Jennifer and Emma. He nodded. Dad didn't understand that when he called that night. I tried to warn him, but he thought I was just making excuses. He was coming to save me, and I knew it would get all of us killed. Can you understand why someone would choose crime to protect the people they love? Tell me in the comments, is Carter a victim or a villain? I want to meet them, I said. Carter's head snapped up. Mom, no. It's not safe. My husband and daughter are dead because of secrets. No more secrets, Carter. If Emma is my granddaughter, I want to meet her. We argued about it for another hour. Carter insisted it was too dangerous, that the people he worked for were watching him, that bringing me into Jennifer and Emma's life would put all of us at risk. But I was done being protected from the truth. You have a choice, I told him. Introduce me to my granddaughter, or I'll show up at that house in Tacoma and introduce myself. 2 days later, Carter picked me up at the Seattle airport. I'd never flown alone before, Frank had always handled the travel arrangements. But I wasn't the same woman who'd let her son block her calls for 3 months. The drive to Tacoma was quiet. Carter kept checking his mirrors, taking random turns, making sure we weren't being followed. I watched him transform from my nervous son into someone harder, more alert. Someone who'd learned to live with danger. Jennifer thinks you're my business partner's mother, he said as we pulled into the driveway. She knows we've been having family problems, but she doesn't know the details. The house was small but tidy, with a little garden in front and children's toys scattered on the porch. Normal. The kind of place I'd imagined Carter living someday, just not in secret. Jennifer answered the door before we could knock. She was prettier than the photos Rachel had shown me, long brown hair, tired eyes, but a genuine smile that lit up her whole face when she saw Carter. You must be Mrs. Patterson, she said, reaching out to hug me like we were old friends. I've heard so much about you. Lies. She'd heard whatever story Carter had told her about his family. But her warmth seemed real. Then Emma came running around the corner. My breath caught in my throat. 4 years old, with Carter's dark hair and stubborn chin, but something else too. Something that reminded me of Mia at that age. The way she moved, confident and curious about everything. Are you Daddy's mom? She asked, looking up at me with wide brown eyes. I'm your grandma Darlene, I said, kneeling down to her level. Emma studied my face seriously. Daddy said his mom lived far away and was very sad. I was sad, I admitted. But I'm happy to meet you. She hugged me then, this little girl who didn't know she was the center of a web of lies and danger. Her arms around my neck felt like forgiveness I didn't deserve. We spent the afternoon playing with dolls and reading stories. Jennifer made lunch and showed me photos of Emma's first steps, her first day of preschool, all the grandmother moments I'd missed. Carter watched from the doorway, and I could see the love in his eyes. Whatever else he'd done wrong, he genuinely adored this child. But I could also see the fear. Have you ever met a family member you never knew existed? Share your story below. It's overwhelming and beautiful at the same time. I want to have a memorial service, I told Carter that evening. For your father and sister. A real one, with you there. We were sitting in Jennifer's living room after Emma had gone to bed. Jennifer was in the kitchen, giving us privacy to talk family business. Mom, I can't. Yes, you can. Frank and Mia died trying to save you. The least you can do is honor their memory properly. Carter looked older than his 35 years. Lines around his eyes, gray in his hair that hadn't been there at Christmas 2 years ago. The weight of his choices was aging him. What if someone sees me? What if they start asking questions about why I wasn't at the original funeral? Then we tell them the truth. That you were grieving privately. That you needed time to process the loss. Not the whole truth, of course. But enough truth to stop the lies from multiplying. We planned it for the following weekend. Just family and close friends. I called Frank's brother in Montana, Mia's best friend from college, a few neighbors who'd known us for years. Small, intimate, the way Frank would have wanted it. Carter drove down from Seattle with Jennifer and Emma. I'd told Jennifer that Carter's father and sister had died in a car accident and that he'd been too overwhelmed to attend the funeral. She didn't ask questions, just held his hand and promised to help however she could. The service was in our backyard, under the oak tree Frank had planted when we first moved to Iowa. Pastor Williams came, even though it wasn't official church business. He'd known Frank for 20 years and understood why we needed this second goodbye. I'd set up a table with photos, Frank in his railroad uniform, Mia at veterinary school graduation, family pictures from better times. Carter stood next to me as people shared memories, his hand heavy on my shoulder. Emma didn't understand why everyone was sad, but she sat quietly in Jennifer's lap, occasionally whispering questions that made the adults smile despite their tears. When it came time for Carter to speak, I wasn't sure he'd be able to do it. He stood up slowly, hands shaking, and looked at the small group of people who'd loved Frank and Mia. My father taught me that a man takes care of his family, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. My sister taught me that love means telling the truth, even when it's hard. He paused, looking at me. I failed them both. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the man they raised me to be. As we scattered the ashes under Frank's oak tree, Carter whispered something to Emma about her grandpa and aunt watching over her from heaven. She nodded solemnly and threw a handful of flower petals into the wind. For the first time in months, I felt like we were a family again. Broken, complicated, built on secrets and lies, but still family. How do you honor the dead while healing the living? Share your thoughts. Grief is different for everyone. 6 months later, Carter made the hardest decision of his life. He walked into the FBI field office in Seattle and told them everything. Every name, every crime, every payment he'd facilitated over the past 20 years. In exchange for his cooperation, they offered him witness protection for his family and a reduced sentence. He called me from a pay phone outside the federal building. I did it, Mom. I told them everything. I was in my kitchen, making the same coffee Frank used to drink every morning, trying to build a routine that didn't include the people I'd lost. What happens now? They're moving Jennifer and Emma tomorrow. New names, new city, new life. I won't be able to contact you for a while, maybe years, until the trials are over. My heart clenched. I just found my granddaughter, and now I was losing her again. What about you? Federal prison, probably 3 to 5 years if I keep cooperating. Could be worse. The people I was working for, Let's just say they won't be in a position to hurt anyone anymore. I closed my eyes. My son was going to prison, but he was finally free from the life that had killed his father and sister. Carter? Yeah, Mom. I'm proud of you. Silence on the other end. Then quiet crying. I don't deserve that. Maybe not. But Frank would be proud too. You're finally doing the right thing. The next morning, a federal marshal showed up at my door with an envelope from Carter. Inside was a photo of Emma at the memorial service, throwing flower petals under Frank's oak tree. On the back, in Carter's handwriting, "She'll know her grandpa and aunt loved her." Also in the envelope was a letter from Jennifer. "Mrs. Patterson, I don't understand everything that's happening, but I know Carter loves you very much. He talks about you and Frank and Mia all the time. Emma asks about her grandma Darlene every day. When this is all over, when it's safe, I hope we can be a real family. You raised a good man who made some bad choices, but he's trying to fix them now. That has to count for something." I kept that letter on my refrigerator next to Emma's drawing of a rainbow that she'd made during her visit. Small reminders that somewhere out there, I had family who cared about me. The house felt less empty knowing that someday, when the trials were over and the dangerous people were locked away, I might hear Emma's laughter in these rooms again. Frank's tools still hung in the garage, waiting for the day Carter might come home to use them. What would you sacrifice to protect your family? Tell me in the comments. Sometimes the hardest choices are the right ones. 2 years later, I got the call I'd been waiting for. "Mom? It's me." Carter's voice, older but lighter somehow. Free of the weight he'd been carrying for so long. "Where are you?" "I can't say exactly, but we're safe. All of us. The trials are over, the bad guys are locked up, and the marshals say we can start rebuilding our lives." I gripped the phone, afraid to hope too much. "Emma?" 6 years old now, just lost her first tooth. She's been practicing writing letters to her grandma Darlene. 2 years. I'd missed 2 years of my granddaughter's life, but there would be time to make up for it. "Jennifer?" "She's amazing, Mom. Stronger than I ever deserved. She's been going to school, studying to be a teacher. Says she wants to help kids who need second chances. Like the second chance I was giving Carter. Like the second chance Frank and Mia couldn't give him. Can I see you?" "Soon. We're moving back to the Pacific Northwest, different city but close enough for visits. The marshals are helping us start fresh, new identities but real lives this time." I walked to the window, looking out at Frank's oak tree. It was bigger now, stronger, its roots deep in Iowa soil. Like our family, it had survived storms and grown from them. "Carter?" "Yeah? Your father and sister, they would forgive you. They died trying to save you because they loved you. That love doesn't die with them." "I know, Mom. I'm finally ready to believe that." 3 months later, a little girl with dark hair and stubborn chin ran into my backyard and threw her arms around my waist. Emma, 8 pounds heavier and 3 inches taller, but still my granddaughter. Carter looked different too. Thinner from his time in prison, but calmer. The haunted look in his eyes had been replaced by something I hadn't seen in years, peace. Jennifer hugged me like the daughter-in-law I'd never had, and we cried together over the kitchen table where Frank used to read his morning paper. That evening, we sat under Frank's oak tree and told Emma stories about her grandfather who worked on trains and her aunt who loved animals. She listened with wide eyes, asking questions about people she'd never meet but would always know through our memories. Carter helped me fix the fence that had been broken since winter, using Frank's tools with hands that finally knew what honest work felt like. Some traditions were worth keeping. As the sun set over Iowa, I watched my son push his daughter on the swing Frank had built 30 years ago, and I felt something I hadn't felt since the night of the accident, complete. Carter's secret had destroyed us. But facing it together had saved what was left. Thanks for staying with me through this journey. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the messy, complicated truth of family love. Tell me in the comments, what's the hardest thing you've ever had to forgive? Remember, sometimes the secrets that break us are the ones that ultimately heal us.